The storm outside the restaurant had begun to roar like a wounded beast when everything in Leora Vantrell's life changed forever. Minutes earlier, she had been laughing, cruelly, sharply, with the confidence of a woman who believed she was untouchable. Across the candlelit table, the man she mocked sat quietly, his eyes calm, his hands steady, his heartbeat unwavering even as her words struck where they knew it would hurt most. And yet, only hours later, in the darkest part of that same night, Leora would cling to his arm with desperate, trembling fingers as he carried her life in his hands. This is how pride shattered, how humility blossomed, and how Asio learned the worth of a man she once dismissed just because he worked a job she didn't deem worthy. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected heroes, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Hearts. It truly helps more stories like this reach the world. Leora Vantrell, 33, polished, wealthy, and known in boardrooms across the city as the Velvet Blade, had agreed to this blind date only because her best friend insisted she needed a break from men who cared more about her money than her heart. But as she stepped into the quiet, dimly lit restaurant that night, her sapphire heels clicking against marble, she expected someone who matched her world, glossy, ambitious, and dripping success. Instead, she found a man in an inexpensive button-up shirt, sleeves slightly worn, hair a bit tousled as if he rushed to get there, and a nervous smile that wasn't meant to charm, but simply to greet. His name was Evan Corlund. He stood to shake her hand, and she noticed the calluses. He wasn't lying when he said he worked as a grocery store stocker. She had blinked, stunned, unable to hide it. A CEO and a shelf stocker. Someone's idea of a joke, surely. But Evan didn't seem to mind the mismatch. He seemed simply grateful she didn't walk away immediately. Maybe she should have. But Leora had a stubborn streak, and she also hated looking like a bad sport. The date began politely enough, though awkward. The chandeliers above cast warm gold halos over the burgundy tablecloths, and the soft hum of jazz blended with distant thunder. Leora sipped wine that cost more per glass than Evan probably made in 2 hours. She noticed he held his water carefully, rotating the glass unconsciously. A nervous habit, she assumed. What she didn't yet know was that everything he did, every measured movement, came from years of trying to stretch time, money, and hope to raise a small daughter alone. When he told her he was a single dad, her expression flickered. She didn't hide her shock well. She didn't hide much of anything well. She had always prided herself on being transparent, though honesty without compassion was closer to cruelty. Evan wasn't fragile, but he felt the weight of her stare like ice on skin that he told her about his daughter, Sophie, 6 years old, bright as morning sun, whose school lunches he woke up early to pack, whose bedtime stories he never missed, even on the nights when exhaustion blurred the words. He told her he worked 2 part-time shifts so he could be home when she finished school. He mentioned he used to dream of finishing college, maybe becoming a teacher one day. But dreams shifted. Responsibilities rose. Life happened. Leora stirred her wine. Her gaze slid over him like she was assessing a resume she had no intention of approving. It wasn't that she was evil, just shaped by a world where success meant superiority. She lived by it. She measured others by it. She couldn't help it. Her words, when they slipped, were sharp. She didn't even realize how hard they struck by the time dessert arrived. The storm outside had grown violent, rattling the glass windows. The lights flickered once, twice, as thunder cracked like a whip across the night sky. Leora's irritation grew. This date was a waste of time. A lesson learned. She'd let no one else set her up again. But fate has ways of humbling the proud. As they stepped outside into the nearly midnight darkness, rain slashing sideways under howling wind, Leora realized her driver was delayed, stuck behind an accident caused by the storm. Evan offered to wait with her. She nearly refused until lightning struck so close the ground trembled beneath her heels. She swallowed pride and nodded stiffly. They moved under the restaurant's awning, thunder pounding the air around them. The wind screamed like it wanted to tear the city apart. A sudden shatter filled the night, a blown transformer across the street. Lights went out block by block until the street fell into near-total darkness, lit only by distorted flashes of lightning. Leora stiffened. Darkness was her childhood fear, a relic from nights spent alone in a broken home before she built her empire. Her breath quickened. The elegant, Powerful CEO felt the old panic clawing at the edges of her chest. Evan noticed. He stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that she could sense another human presence anchoring her. A moment later, the wind tore a metal sign loose from a nearby building. It spun wildly, slicing the air with deadly force. Leora froze, eyes locked on the speeding shadow coming straight toward her. Evan reacted before he could think. He lunged, grabbed her waist, and pulled her hard against him as the sign crashed into the pavement where she had stood just seconds earlier, sending sparks and shards flying like shrapnel. She gasped, shaken. His arms remained braced around her until she found her breath again. Rainwater ran down his face, dripping from his hair, but he didn't seem to notice. His only concern was her, what she thought she knew about worth, about strength, split open in that moment. As the storm worsened, Evan insisted they move inside the nearby underground parking structure for safety. She didn't argue. The ground-level entrance was slick with rain and debris, making each step treacherous. Leora stumbled in her heels and would have fallen if Evan hadn't caught her wrist quickly, steadying her with surprising gentleness. Inside, the hum of faraway, echoing thunder made the concrete chamber feel cavernous and cold. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the ceiling. Leora hugged herself, trembling. Her dress, silk and elegant earlier, now clung to her like chilled second skin. Evan shrugged off his thin jacket, soaked but still offering some warmth, and placed it around her shoulders. She stared at him, finally seeing not the man she'd mocked, but a father, a protector, a human being who had more character in one night than some men had in their entire lives. Minutes passed. Then an aftershock of thunder vibrated the walls. Somewhere above, something heavy groaned, metal under pressure. Evan's eyes snapped upward. In a split second, he shoved Leora away from an overhead pipe just as it tore loose and crashed down, slamming into the concrete where she had been standing. Dust exploded, lights blinked out entirely, plunging them into full darkness. Her breath hitched. She reached blindly. Evan's hand found hers. Squeezing gently, he guided her deeper into the structure where a ramp led safely to a maintenance area with intact lighting. They sat on a crate, soaked, shaken, and breathing hard. And in that dim, quiet pocket of shelter, Leora finally broke, not dramatically, but quietly, like a dam surrendering to too much weight. She confessed that she was terrified of the dark, terrified of helplessness, terrified of vulnerability. She admitted she judged too quickly because she'd been judged her whole life for not being enough. Even when she succeeded, Evan listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't lecture. He understood far more than she expected. For the first time that night, she asked him about his life with sincerity. And when he spoke of Sophie, her laughter, her strength, her tiny victories, Leora saw a man richer in love and purpose than any boardroom titan she had ever met. When her driver finally reached them after midnight, Leora didn't want to leave. Something had changed inside her. Something she couldn't articulate yet. Before stepping into her car, she turned to Evan, her voice soft, trembling for reasons she didn't fully understand. She thanked him, not just for saving her life, but for seeing her in the darkness without judgment, something rare and precious. That night, long after she returned home and slipped out of her ruined dress, she couldn't stop thinking about him. His humility, his bravery, his steady warmth, his devotion to his daughter, the unfairness of how she had treated him, and the dangerous realization that maybe she hadn't been living as fully as she thought. Days later, she found his number. She texted, not with commands or arrogance, but with vulnerability. She asked if she could make it up to him, not as a CEO, not as the Velvet Blade, but as a woman who wanted to learn who he really was. Evan hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he agreed, and from that night forward, Leora Vantral began rewriting what success meant, not in profit margins or prestige, but in courage, humility, and the kind of strength that shows up when the world goes dark. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Hearts. Your support brings more real, emotional stories to life. And so, under the memory of the storm that humbled pride and revealed true character, a CEO and a single father began a journey neither of them could have predicted, but both desperately needed.